Hey, what's up? Chris Seiter here, and today we're going to be talking about 21 signs that your ex is thinking about unconsciously that make them want you back. Now, if you're anything like me, the first thing you're probably wondering about before anything is, wait, do I even have a chance of getting my ex back? Well, if that's you and you're sitting there and wondering that, I have great news for you. I've actually put together a special quiz designed to answer this exact question for you. This quiz took me a few months to come up with, and it's pretty simple. It should only take you about 2 minutes to complete. You will be taken to a page that asks you a bunch of questions about you, your ex, and your situation. Then based on how you answer those questions, we're going to give you an idea of what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. We're also going to be taking some of your answers and giving you specialized advice. So if you're interested in taking that quiz, all you have to do is simply look in the description below this YouTube video, click on the link that you see there. Again, all you have to do is simply look in the description of this YouTube video and we will hook you up. All right, let's begin.
All right, today we're going to be talking about the unconscious signs your ex can exhibit if they want you back. These are things that they are not aware that they are doing, but they are clear signs that they want you back. And the first distinction I want you to make is that there's actually 3 categories of signs that we're going to be looking at today. The first category is going to be universal signs. These are signs that can be applied to any situation. The second category is going to be male-centered, which means these are signs that are only going to be specific if you're trying to get an ex back who is a male. And then there's, of course, female-centered sign, which is for people who are wanting to be specific if they're trying to get an ex-girlfriend back, right? So let's talk about the universal signs first. So the first sign that the first universal sign that your ex is unconsciously interested in you is if that you see them paying attention to you on social media. The perfect example I can give you here is Facebook, for example. Facebook gives you the ability to like, comment, say something to your friends, or have a friend say something to you about your ex. If you start noticing your ex liking or commenting or doing things like that on Facebook, could be a good unconscious sign. The second sign is actually the idea of leaning towards versus leaning away. So I want to show you kind of a picture that I've put together here. This is an example of how we feel attracted to someone when we just naturally lean towards them, and how we can actually feel unattracted to someone if we lean away from them. So paying attention to your ex's body language when you're on a date, for example, is an important thing to do. If you start noticing that they're leaning into you a lot, it's a good sign. It's a really good sign. The third sign is actually blushing. So this is a perfect example of someone blushing. Blushing can be a good example of them being unconsciously interested in you because guess what? They have no control over if they blush or not. The fourth sign is mirroring. Now, if you didn't listen to any of my more recent YouTube videos, I talked about this concept of mirroring, which is essentially modeling your body language after someone who you're interested in. So, for example, let's say you are interested in me and you notice that I lean back in my chair. And pretty soon, a couple seconds after you see me do that, you actually unconsciously do the same thing without even being aware of that going on. They call this concept mirroring, and then what they found, or what scientists have found, is that people who mirror tend to be actually interested or attracted to the person that they're mirroring. And of course, the fifth unconscious sign is you start noticing your ex is smiling a lot more around you. Not so much to unpack there, that's pretty self-explanatory. And the sixth unconscious sign, that is a universal sign that can be applied to anyone, is actually having them reach out without you doing anything. Throughout this process, I talk a lot about the idea of investment and why it's really important for you to get all kinds of investment from your ex. Now, investment can be measured in many different ways. It can be measured in time. It can be measured in emotional energy. And some people can measure it through money. Through, hey, my ex bought me flowers, or hey, my ex spent this much money on the date. They're investing. Another form of investment that I think is often overlooked is the idea of them reaching out to you first without you having to do anything. It's an unconscious thing, and it's an unconscious pattern that people can get into if they are interested in their exes. So that pretty much covers the universal unconscious signs. But what I'd like to do now is actually start talking about the niched down specific signs for genders, specifically the signs that you're going to start seeing males start exhibiting. And this is really interesting because, in my opinion, this is where things really separate. I was always under the assumption that, okay, these signs are pretty general. They're universal. All signs are universal, but that's actually not true. There are certain signs that men will do that women will never do, and certain signs that women will do that men will never do. So the first male-centered sign is the idea of parted lips. Now, what is parted lips? Well, a good example is this picture right here. This is an example of parted lips. It's something that men will do unconsciously, and I would sit here and say, like, oh yeah, men do that, but the problem is there's no way for me to actually state that because I wouldn't know if I'm doing it unconsciously. The best person to ask would be my wife, but I can get a sense that this is a really good unconscious sign and something that you have no control over. So if you start noticing your ex with parted lips when he's talking to you, good sign. And of course, you've got raised eyebrows, but I do want to add an interesting caveat here, and that's the idea of raised eyebrows in tandem with a smile. So a good example is the movie Tangled. This specific image is a good example of a man who is unconsciously, or maybe in this particular image or this particular scene in the movie, is consciously attracted to the person he's talking to. So if you start noticing raised eyebrows and smiling from your ex, it's a good sign. I'd say look for those two things in tandem. The ninth sign is self-grooming. Now, this is kind of interesting. Self-grooming can be a lot of different things. It can be wanting to look good. So you'll let's say you're on a date with your ex, and you start noticing him fidgeting with his hair. Right. This is something that I do a lot. Sometimes I'll fidget with my beard, or I'll kind of stroke it. Other times I'll adjust my shirt so that it's properly centered or anything. Any little tick, and sometimes it can be a nervous tick. Anything like that is an unconscious sign that they want to look good for you. And if you follow that logic, if they want to look good for you, they want to look good for you because they have feelings for you and they want you to view them in the right way. Okay, so the 10th sign we're going to be talking about is actually the idea that men will actually stand with their legs spread. Now, I think there are some sexual connotations, and I actually want to show you a picture here of, I believe this is James Dean, who is standing with his legs spread. But I think the sexual connotation behind it is actually by having a man stand with his legs spread is actually another form of him presenting his crotch. So if you start noticing your ex doing that, that could be a sign as well. Number 11, this is actually my own addition to the male-centered signs, and that's the idea of playing with the buttons on your jacket. And so for this, I'm going to have to tell you a story. My first girlfriend ever, before we actually dated, I was just enthralled with the idea that, hey, this girl likes me, right? And I remember being so nervous, and I had a lot of that self-grooming nervous tics thing going on, but another nervous tic that I had going on is, I'll never forget, we were at a football game, which is a big thing in Texas in high school. We were at a football game on a Friday night, and we were in the stands standing next to each other, and it was a little bit cold. I believe it was October. And I remember I had a jacket on, and I remember just fidgeting with the buttons on my jacket, being so nervous, but also kind of attractive. I just had like this extra energy. I had to find a way to get out, and I ended up kind of messing around with the buttons, and the buttons actually came off of the jacket. So this can be another really interesting, good sign to pay attention to. And then, of course, you've got prolonged eye contact. So the key word here isn't the eye contact aspect. That's pretty self-explanatory. In fact, I think you can make a good case that eye contact can be a universal unconscious sign. But I think the prolonged part is what makes this a little niched down to men. If you start noticing a man prolonging his eye contact a little bit longer, whether it's unconscious or not, it's a good sign. Okay, so that pretty much covers the male-centered signs. Let's switch gears and talk about the female-centered signs for those of you who are men watching this who want to get their exes back. All right, so female-centered signs. The first female-centered sign I would actually talk to you about today is the idea of batting eyelashes. That's and I want to actually take you back to the blushing sort of meme GIF thing I have going on here. And you'll notice that in this particular GIF, there's kind of a little bit of a batting of the eyelashes. Now that I'm actually watching the GIF, I'm realizing it's not the best representation. But if you start noticing blushing in tandem with batting eyelashes or something like that, it can be a good unconscious sign. And then, of course, number 14, we've got pouting. Now, pouting is kind of interesting because there is such a thing as real pouting and there is such a thing as fake pouting. We're actually looking for the playful fake pouting. This is a good example of playful fake pouting right here. This is kind of meant as sort of a flirt, right? You're doing that because you're flirting with the person you're talking to, and sometimes you can be doing that in an unconscious way if you're a woman. Though I don't think I'm the best person to be talking about unconscious women's signs, but I'm going to do my best for you guys. Okay, so number 15 is actually licking or biting lips, right? So if you start noticing your ex doing something like this around you, which I think is super, super obvious, almost sort of like saying like, hey, kiss here. That's where I want you to kiss. It can be an unconscious sign. Usually it will not be this obvious. It will be very, very, very sort of stealthy and almost you really have to kind of pay attention to it. But pay attention for it nevertheless. And then, of course, number 16 is emphasizing breasts. And I don't really have a ton to say about this one other than the fact that this is kind of a no-brainer. What I do want to say about it is I believe you can make a strong case that this is not an unconscious or a subconscious decision to emphasize breasts. You typically, when you're emphasizing your breasts, are going to be choosing a wardrobe to wear. Right, so you're going to, at some point when you're choosing your wardrobe, you're going to look at this shirt or this blouse or whatever you're going to be wearing and saying, wow, my boobs look great in that, right? You're making that conscious decision to wear that. Now, what I believe, there's certain aspects of, the conscious decision of wardrobe. I believe the other thing you need to look at is women, if they specifically kind of mess around with their posture to kind of put their breasts out, I believe that is another unconscious sign that they are attracted. Number 17 is showing the delicacy of their bodies, right? So I don't know if I can quite put this into words perfectly, but if you've ever been around those women, and this is I'm just talking for guys, if you've ever been around those women who you look at and you just think to yourself, wow, I shouldn't hug her too tightly because I feel like she's like a flower. I feel like she'll break. That's kind of attractive, right? You kind of like it when a woman looks very delicate and doesn't look very masculine for the most part. So if you start noticing that they are specifically showing the delicacy of their bodies, it can be a really good unconscious sign. And number 19 is the accidental touch. So what do I mean by the accidental touch? Well, let's say you're on a date and you tell a joke or something and your ex-girlfriend just laughs playfully and kind of laughs and touches you on the shoulder or touches you accidentally on the hand. Those can be good unconscious signs as well. So I think that's going to do it for the unconscious signs that we're going to be looking at today. I do want to say if you want a little bit more in-depth discussion or a little bit more of an in-depth look at these unconscious signs that your ex wants you back, I've actually put together a companion article to go alongside of this because this is an interesting topic. So if you're interested in reading that companion article, all you have to do is simply look below in the description of this YouTube video and we'll hook you up. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.